I am Commissar Kyle. I have stood against heresy, Xenos, and the madness of the warp itself. But the most dangerous thing I have ever encountered was a man who simply refused to acknowledge the existence of the Imperium. A man who followed his own 3 rules, not the Emperor's law. This is the report I will never officially file. This is the story of the transporter. The setting was Noctis 7, a Hive World port so grim, even the Administratum forgot to tax half of its cargo. We, the 82nd Death Korps, were there to shut down a smuggling cartel that had dared to pilfer plasma cores from an Astartes resupply route. The purge was going well, efficiently. We were deep in the Iron Zone, a labyrinth of rusted containers and forgotten machinery. It was there, amidst the chemical stench and the echoing drip of toxins, that I found him. He stood over my grenadiers. 3 of my best, motionless. They hadn't been shot. No bolt pistol impact, no last blast burns, just broken bodies, professionally disabled. Snapped necks, shattered joints. A terrifyingly efficient close-quarters job. I felt the familiar cold fire of righteous fury. It wasn't just murder, it was an insult to the discipline of the guard. I raised my bolt pistol, the heavy, righteous weight of it steady in my hand. My voice, amplified by the Vox grill, cut through the silence like a chainsword. "Halt, subject. You are charged with assault and murder against Imperial Guard personnel. State your designation and prepare to submit to the Emperor's justice, or accept judgment right here." The subject, balding, icy, unreadable eyes. He wore a suit that was immaculate in its grime, a strange fusion of high-quality fabric and practical, unseen armor. He didn't even raise his hands. He merely wiped a smear of blood from his cuff, presumably my grenadiers, with a clinical detachment that chilled me more than any chaos cultist's fervor. His voice was low, a rough gravel, utterly devoid of fear or deference. It was the voice of a man accustomed to being obeyed, regardless of rank or uniform. He looked at me, at my greatcoat, my aquila, my Death Korps escort, and saw nothing of consequence. "Listen to me, lad in the hat. There are 3 rules. First, I don't know your rules. Second, I don't know what you're hauling. And third, if I take a job, I finish it. You were in my way. Heresy. Not the screaming, frothing kind. This was calculated, quiet heresy, the absolute refusal to acknowledge imperial law, the very foundation of order in the galaxy. He stood in a world ruled by the God Emperor and spoke of his 3 rules. The morale of my surrounding Kriegers, encased in their protective masks, felt thin and fragile, like a weak pane of glass. It was worse than fear. It was confusion. They had no chapter for this in the Tacticae Imperium. I made the only choice a commissar can make when faith falters. The personal example. I tossed the bolt pistol aside. The clang of the heavy weapon on the metal decking echoed. My duty is to purge heresy by force. If you ignore the law, you will perish by the hand of discipline. I moved. I brought all the training from the Schola Progenium to bear. The rigid, brutal combat style designed to break bones and restore order. But my every move, my kick to his flank, my attempt at a throat strike, felt slow, predictable. My training, all my lessons in Imperial Guard combat, dissolved against his sheer animal efficiency. He was faster, sharper, brutally economical. My right hook was intercepted, the motion nullified with a frightening ease. The next thing I felt was blinding, searing pain in my solar plexus, a blow so perfectly placed it stole my breath. I crashed violently against a stack of ferrocrete crates. The impact tore my greatcoat, my lungs seized. I tasted copper. Humiliation. He stood over me, not gloating, not pausing to admire his work. He merely looked down with that cold, assessing gaze. In his hand he now held a small, cryo-sealed container. It was at that moment, through the haze of pain, that I recognized the sigils on the container. It wasn't smuggled plasma cores. It was a personal, sacred artifact belonging to a high-ranking Inquisitor. "You talk too much, Commissar, and you work too hard," he said, his voice flat. "I'm here for what I came for, and it's not Imperial property. It's valuable cargo." The realization hit me. He wasn't a heretic or a chaos cultist. He was an unauthorized, highly effective agent, operating under his own terrifyingly effective protocols, a force of nature, indifferent to the structures of the Imperium. I struggled to my feet, grinding my teeth against the pain. Retreat was not an option. Executing my own men to cover my failure was unthinkable. It would only cement his victory. I had to salvage discipline from the wreckage of my own defeat. "Understood. You have taken your cargo, but you killed 3 Imperial soldiers. This demands satisfaction. I cannot allow you to walk away unpunished." He turned his back on me. He held the container casually under his arm. The act of turning his back on a fully armed commissar was the ultimate display of confidence, a profound arrogance that transcended mere pride. "And I can't afford to be detained," he replied, his gaze fixed on the exit ramp. "Tell your gas-masked friends it was an unfortunate accident, and now you owe me. You owe me that I don't tell the Inquisition how quickly you were laid out on the deck." And then he left. He didn't run. He didn't hurry. He simply walked out of the warehouse, disappearing into the toxic mists of Noctis 7, as if stepping out for a casual stroll. I stood there, defeated, my pride in tatters. The transporter. He ignores the Imperium, but does not work against it. A lethal, professional paradox. I had to restore order. The doubt in the eyes of the Kriegers was worse than any physical wound. I snatched up my bolt pistol. Bang! I fired a shot not at the enemy who escaped, but into the ferrocrete wall right above the heads of 2 Kriegers who had visibly hesitated. The noise was deafening, the smell of burning propellant sharp. "Form up," I roared, my voice raw but authoritative. "Forget what you saw. You failed to defeat that shadow. But you have not failed the Emperor. Resume the purge. For the Guard. For the Emperor." Discipline snapped back into place like a bulkhead slamming shut. They turned, facing the enemy, their shame masked by their discipline. But I know the truth. That incident, it will remain a classified footnote in my mind, a testament to the super-secret, non-existent, and highly desirable operative known as J. I pray to the throne I never see him again.